Hello and welcome back. This past weekend, Elonie and I went on a fun mother-daughter trip. We started out on Saturday and we're in Ohio. We were headed over to Indiana. So on Saturday we headed out. There's a bookstore in Dayton that she always enjoys stopping at. So that was one of our first stops. But before we stopped there, we visited my oldest daughter, Chloe, for a little bit. She was right on our trip path. So we stopped in and chatted with her a little bit and then headed over to Dayton. If any of you are book lovers in Dayton, Ohio, there is a used bookstore called $1 Book Swap is the name of it. And all of the books in that used bookstore are $1.25 each. So she is an avid reader, and this is a trip that she made for the first time last year for her birthday. She wanted to go to the Dollar Book Swap and just have a shopping spree to buy books. So that's what we did last year, and then did it again over the weekend. So we stopped there and then stayed overnight just across the Ohio-Indiana border. We hit a couple thrift shops on the way, stayed over once we got into Indiana just a little bit, and then headed to Avon, Indiana that day, stopping here and there as we went. It took us straight through Indianapolis, so that was a little bit different than the driving I'm used to here where I live. And so straight through Indianapolis and did some shopping along the way, hit some more bookstores, thrift shops. Those are the sorts of shopping spots that she really enjoys. And I wanted to make sure she was having a good time on the way over because we were headed to a quilt store. The name of it is Love It So over in Avon, Indiana. And they were having a grand opening of their new shop, and so we got to go over and see the new shop and hang out with some quilters there, and it was a lot of fun. But since that was our final destination this past Monday, I knew that we needed to hit some other fun things along the way for her. And so it was fun. She's a delightful traveling companion. I said to her that it was so nice that we were able to do this. I was thinking back to how it would have been to travel with my mom and my sisters when I was her age, and the ability to use Google Maps and just look things up there is so convenient and it just navigates you so nicely. And if we had to use those old paper maps that we had to use back in the day, that would have certainly been tricky, especially with road construction and detours and that sort of thing. So it's so nice that we are able to travel like that. We've started doing more mom-daughter trips over the last couple years. The girls and I have done a beach vacation every spring for a couple years, and that's been really fun. And let me tell you, it is so nice when they get to the age where they can do all of their packing before a trip on their own and all of the unpacking and laundry that they have accumulated on the back end of the trip. Because if you have traveled with young kids, you know that all of that packing beforehand and then the unpacking afterward takes up a lot of time. You almost need a recovery from the packing and unpacking. So it's so nice. She can, if we're going somewhere, she can just get herself ready. I don't have to worry about anything in that regard. So we had a fun little trip, but I'm telling you this story because we ended at that quilt shop, and then on the way home, we just got into our car and we're headed back to Ohio, and she said, "Hey Mom, I wonder, what would you think about if I were to pick out some fabrics and you could make me a quilt?" And this is the first time she's expressed any interest in a quilt. And I said, "Well, why didn't you look at fabrics while we were in the quilt shop for the last couple hours?" And she said, "Well, I didn't know what you would say." And she said, "But when we were in Florida," you remember last week I mentioned that she had gone to Florida with my sister's husband, and my niece for a couple weeks, just not that long ago, very recently. And she said Joe, which would be her uncle, had a quilt on the bed in the room she stayed in. His family owns the house that they stayed in. And she said, so he had this quilt on his bed when he was growing up, and I really like this quilt, and I think that I would like to have something similar. And so she said it was just squares and maybe like stripes. She couldn't exactly describe it to me, and she was telling me the colors that she wanted. And so she said, when we get back home, could we go to some different quilt shops and I'll just pick out some fabrics and you can make me a quilt. Now I'm hoping that maybe she's going to want to do a little bit of the sewing. She has done a fair amount of sewing because when she was younger, she always liked to make herself little stuffed animals or little blankets or little clothes for her dolls or things like that. So she's definitely used my sewing machine. She knows how to use a rotary cutter. She can iron. So she certainly could do it. Now she says, but I don't really like sewing. So I don't know if she's actually going to end up sewing it together. But yesterday we went and visited some of our local quilt shops. We hit, if you're familiar with Berlin, Ohio, we hit Miller's Dry Goods, which is actually in Charm, Helping Hands, which is in Berlin, and Plaid Sheep Company, which is in Berlin. And so we hit those shops, and she didn't exactly know what she wanted, but she started choosing some fabrics. And when I started to see the fabrics that she was gravitating towards, that was helpful. And then we could kind of zone in on what she wanted. Oh, we went to Anna Luisa's in Navarre also. That was a new one. I forgot about that one. That was our last stop. And that's a beautiful shop too. I had never been there in Navarre, Ohio. And if you've never been, if you're somewhat local, it's a great one to check out. Actually, all of the quilt shops I've mentioned so far in this video, Love It Sew, and then all of the ones here in my local area are just wonderful to stop at. So she started picking out fabrics, and I thought it would be fun to show you the fabrics that she has chosen so far, because it's just interesting to me to see what she picks. And I just let her pick what she wanted. I didn't worry about, you know, maybe my notions and ideas coming into play. I just let her pick what she wanted, knowing it's going to be completely different than what I would pick right now. But it's not too far off from what I would have picked when I was her age, which was interesting to me. So she ended up being interested in some homespuns. So we've got a lot of blues in various colors, some darker black sort of colors. But homespuns is where she's landed. Now we do still need to pick up a few more. She doesn't have quite enough. She's looking for twin-ish sized. So this is where we're at. And I also remember different times picking out fabrics with my mom, and depending on the project, my mom made quilts for all of us when we got married. So I remember picking those fabrics out with my mom. And for that one, you know, I was more concerned with making sure everything was coordinated, choosing right scale of prints, a nice mix of colors. I'll have to show you guys that quilt sometime. I've never shared it here on the channel. I need to whip that out sometime. But then when I was choosing fabrics for my own projects, I approached it a little bit differently, and I didn't, you know, I just picked what I liked. And that's a fun way to pick fabrics as well. Just pick what you like. Don't worry too much about if it goes, if it doesn't go. And so that's what she was doing. She was picking what she liked. She did eliminate some as we went, because we would put them all on a stack, and then she would kind of look them over and be like, well, I don't like the way this one jumps out in comparison to the other ones, or this fabric I don't care for as much, or, you know, she had different thoughts about the fabrics as we were going, and she did eliminate some. It'll be interesting to see what else she adds. She prefers, when she looks at this selection, she prefers mostly just the darker ones. So she would like, you know, a lot of these darker ones best, like this, sort of really dark. But she said, but then when I add in these other ones, I like that too. So it's always nice to have contrast, a little bit of contrast. She doesn't have a lot in here, but some contrast and some varying colors. But it was fun seeing her pick things out. And then it cracked me up because she said, people just don't realize how hard this is. And I thought, oh yes, we quilters do realize that it is kind of tricky to narrow things down. And then once we were done picking out all of these, she said, wow, that just took a while. And I said, well, it really didn't. You narrowed that down pretty quickly, and that didn't take that long at all. So it was fun hearing her commentary on picking things out. So I think we're going to hit another quilt shop this afternoon yet and pick out just a couple more fabrics if we can, and then see what happens after that. But I thought you guys might like to see what she's picking. So she's 15. I chat about her fairly often here. And like I said, she's never made a quilt. Chloe, my oldest, has made one quilt. I don't know if she'll ever do it again, but that is okay. I didn't start making quilts until after I moved out. I helped pick out fabrics for that first wedding quilt when I was at home, but didn't make anything, didn't start choosing fabrics on my own or having any interest in sewing or quilting until after I moved out. So, you know, I know there's no rush. If it's something that she enjoys and something that suits her fancy, it's going to happen whenever it happens. So those are Elonie's fabrics. I'll keep you updated on this project. I think that's going to be fun. She's really itching to dive in because she said, we need to go to the quilt shop today, get these picked out so that we can get everything. We're going to pre-wash all of these, get everything washed and pressed so you can start making me my quilt. So we'll see what happens there. All right, so that was the first thing I wanted to start with. The next thing, I've got a few different things we're going to chat about today. The next thing I want to talk about is de-threading quilt tops. I was surprised after last week's video that that was new to a lot of you, and I guess I just kind of took it for granted that maybe I take a lot of things for granted and I think, oh, of course everyone would know what I'm talking about, but de-threading quilt tops in preparation for machine quilting. So I grabbed an old quilt top. It was fun grabbing this quilt top because it was one I had just chatted about. Oh, I don't know if my pile is going to stay. Stay put, little friends. One I had just chatted about with Elonie because she started picking out, you know, these homespun type fabrics. And then she was also looking at some minky type fabrics and flannel, and we looked at wool, we looked at all sorts of things, and she was asking about mixing in different textiles together. And I said, oh, well, I made a quilt. One of my earlier quilts I made had chenille fabric that I mixed in, and I always thought that it looked really pretty. So this is that quilt that I was talking about to her. I'll have to show it to her. I don't think she has, I don't know. She's probably seen this one, but it wouldn't have been recently because I have had it tucked away for a long time. This is a yellow brick road quilt. Comment below if you are in the, yes, I've made a yellow brick road quilt, because I think a lot of us have made yellow brick road quilts, but this is a yellow brick road quilt with homespuns and then just that little bit of chenille. And I pulled it because I was pretty sure it was going to be kind of thready and I could talk about de-threading. So typically when I de-thread, what I'm wanting to do, I'm going to open this up here on the back. Oh, this is funny looking at my pressing on the back. We have come a ways, friends. But when you're looking at the back of your quilt, you want to remove any dark threads that are going to show up onto the top part of your quilt. So this is especially true if you have, maybe you have a quilt with white sashing or cream sashing, and you have dark fabrics mixed in. So maybe you have a navy or a red or a black that you have pieced with. And sometimes you get these little rogue threads like what you see here that, if left as they are, will show through the quilt top after it's machine quilted. So you want to snip all of those away so that you don't run into that problem. And just in general, make it tidy. You know, get rid of all of these extra threads that we don't need, that you don't want showing up through. You can pick these off. Sometimes I'll just run a lint roller over it, and then I'll do the same thing on the front. The front is not typically as messy as the back is, but you're going to have little loose threads like you see here. Sometimes you can just pull these off. Be gentle if you're pulling them out from your seams. Make sure that they are indeed loose threads that are going to pull out. Sometimes they are attached threads, and you can pull a seam and cause a little bit of a gather. So be careful when you're doing it. But like that one right there is more attached. I would just take a scissors and trim that one right there because he is not wanting to just pull out. But, you know, get rid of all your loose threads so that it is, see right there, that is another one that's going to pull. So I would just snip that rather than pull that. Clean up your quilt top so it's all nice and tidy for your long armor. And that is what de-threading is. It takes a little bit of time, but it does make so that you don't get any of those dark threads showing up through or sewn into your quilt top. So that is the final step that I would take before sending my quilt tops out. This one is one that I need to send out. I don't know when I pieced this one. I want to say early 2000s, but couldn't say for sure. It's been a little while, but I think I had extra chenille at one point in time that I was going to add a border, and that's why I never send it out, but I don't even know if I still have that. I did a serious sewing room clean out a couple years ago, so I don't know if I still have that or not. I'd have to look and see, but this one definitely would be ready to be finished off. It's a real cozy quilt. I don't know if I'd just back it in some flannel, keep it kind of lightweight, 'cause it's just a nice one. So that is de-threading, for those of you wondering about that. If you have any other tips or ways that you like to de-thread that I didn't mention, feel free to leave that in the comments. And I have another viewer question. Let me just pull that over here. This one comes to us from Crystal DeHart, 7281. She asks, if someone is going to open a brick and mortar quilt shop with some online footprint, what would be your main piece of advice? I think this is such a fun question because we definitely have seen changes in the quilting industry since the online world came into play. It's been some exciting changes. It gives access to a lot more fabrics and information than what we would have had previously, which has been just a lot of fun. I remember when I very first started quilting, which would have been the late 90s, you know, I had no idea the amount of fabrics that would be available, that were available, that I was unaware of. You know, I was limited to what I could see locally in my local quilt shops, and you know, being able to see new fabrics as we worked our way into the 2000s, and pre-cuts came into play, designer fabric lines came into play, new fabric companies came into play. It's just been really neat that we have access to all of this online. But with that, you know, there have been changes in the way that you might consider how you run your brick and mortar along with an online presence. And, you know, I am not a quilt shop owner, so if you are a quilt shop owner and you have had very good success with certain things you've implemented with bringing in online things into your quilt shop business, be sure to comment below, because I know that there are ways that we can really promote our online quilt shops, our brick and mortar quilt shops that we might not be thinking about. But one of the things that I would say is, if at all possible, and it doesn't have to be big and flashy, but show your quilt shop to some degree online, whether that might be on YouTube, in YouTube videos, or on Facebook, if you have a Facebook group for your quilt shop, on Facebook with Facebook videos. And like I said, it doesn't need to be fancy. There is a learning curve to putting videos up, so start small. And some ways that I think would be great ways to start would be maybe a weekly unboxing video. Hey customers, this is what has come into our shop this week. Let's open up these boxes and take a look at what is going to be available in our quilt shop by tomorrow. And then just go through and open up your boxes and show, oh hey, we have these new fabrics from so-and-so here. These new patterns came in. Oh, wouldn't this make a cute project for your granddaughter, for a new baby? And just show what you have coming into the shop so that customers can see what they have to look forward to, what might not have been there the last time they were in the shop, and they can get excited to come and visit your brick and mortar shop again. Another easy way to do something similar would be to do kind of an employee spotlight favorite in the shop. So, hey friends, this is Susie, and her favorite thing in the shop this week is this fat quarter bundle from Moda by Camille Roskelly. And then, you know, show the fat quarter bundle. She could talk about why she likes this, what plans she might have for sewing with it, you know, something like that. Another thing that you could do if you have customers that are bringing in projects that they have completed using fabrics or patterns that they purchased from your shop. Hey, well, this is our friend Ethel. She's a regular customer at our shop, and She has just finished the most beautiful wool applique quilt, and we just wanted to take a minute to show you. She purchased all of these fabrics and the pattern for this project here at We Love to Sew Quilt Shop, and I just wanted to take a minute to show you how beautiful it is and then show the project. So, you know, just simple things like that where your customers are seeing what's happening in your shop, what's new in your shop, what your employees love about your shop, and just getting them excited for, you know, what you have going on at your quilt shop. And then as you become more comfortable with showing that sort of information, you could add in tutorials, you could do block of the months, you know, blocks of the month, different things like that you could add in. There are so many different ways that you can just bring customers right into your quilt shop without them ever having to leave their home. And that's valuable. That's something that you can definitely, you know, that just adds value to your shop. So those would be some of my suggestions. Start small. Think of some different things like that you can do. You could even do a highlighted pattern of the week, fabric of the week, you know, just different little things like that don't have to be big fancy videos, but just bring customers into your shop via videos that you are providing online. And like I said, if anybody has other suggestions, there's a lot of them. I could keep going on this topic because I just see such tremendous value to providing that for your customers. So if any of you have other specific ideas, or as a customer, if you have shops, brick and mortar shops that are doing something really well online that you enjoy, let us know in the comments. Okay. Next up, we're talking $5 pattern of the month for September. I can't believe I say that every month, don't I? I can't believe we're already at the next month, but here we are, almost to September. I'm not even sure what the date is today when this goes up. I think it's the 30th, 31st. I don't know. Whatever date this is, we're almost to September, and our $5 pattern of the month is available today. Now, this one is a little bit different because my Etsy shop is going to be closed the last 2 weeks of September, completely closed. Both my Etsy shop and also the Coriander Quilts merch shop. I am taking a couple weeks off for some downtime, so those shops are going to be completely closed. So if you wanted to take advantage of the $5 pattern this month for September, you would need to do so within the first few weeks here, couple weeks. I'm going to close it down sometime on Friday, September 13th. Woo! Didn't realize that was Friday the 13th until I said that. So sometime Friday the 13th. So get your orders in ideally by the 12th, Thursday the 12th of September, so that you don't have to wait till I get back in October to have those purchases. But $5 pattern of September, it should be $5 pattern of the half of September, I suppose is what I should be saying, is Warm Hearted, which is this quilt right here. This is a Happy Snowman quilt. This uses peachy keen fabric, which you see tucked back behind me right here. It was fun pulling out just this smaller color palette. It works really well for a winter themed quilt. So this is all regular piecing, no applique in this quilt. A lot of stitch and flip corners, lots of snowballs in this quilt. So you have to be pretty happy and enjoy doing snowball corners. But if you don't, by the time you're done with this quilt, you'll be a pro at them because there are just a lot of them. We have snowballs in the sashing, snowballs on his face, a lot of snowball corners. This is a 56 by 72 inch sized quilt. It's yardage based. You see the yardages here. As always, these yardages are listed over in my Etsy shop with the pattern listing, so you can see those ahead of time. I do have just a couple kits that would include the fabrics for the quilt top as well as the binding and the pattern. I very seldom sell kits because I prefer to let the quilt shops kit up all of these fabrics and sell Coriander Quilts fabrics, but I think I have 4 kits that I can sell for this quilt. So if you like the quilt and you want a kit all ready to go, I've got just a couple of those listed in my shop. I will have the pattern linked below in PDF and paper versions. I'll link the kit below as well. So if you wanted to take advantage of the sale, you could. And then the other thing I will also do, like I usually do, is to mock this up in some other fabric lines over on my blog so that you can see what it would look like in some other fabric lines. So Warm-Hearted, $5 pattern of the half a month. And then the other thing I wanted to chat about just real quick here at the end of the video is the quilts in my backdrop. I always have these listed down in the description box. Whenever I have something hanging back behind me, I will have linked where you can find the pattern or the book or where it came from. But I have been recently getting a lot of questions, and so I just wanted to make note of that, and I thought I would also just verbally mention the quilts back here. So these 3 quilts, this one here, this one, and this one are all from my book, Oh Happy Day. All 3 of those patterns are in there. These fabrics are a mix of Tilda fabrics, not just from one fabric line. This little gray print is from an entirely different fabric line. I don't even know which line that is from. I just chose it because it coordinated so nicely with the Tilda fabrics. This quilt over here, these are Motabella solids, a little bit of background, and then the border is from Sunny Side Up. One great way if you wanted to make a quilt like this is to choose your border fabric first and then decide what you wanted to use for your solids by choosing colors out of your border fabric. And then this one over here, you probably just see a little bit of this one, is a fabric line from Bonnie and Camille. And then hanging behind me is the Cuddle Up Sampler, which is an individual pattern. So that is linked below as well. This is the one that we are sewing up together on Wednesdays. So I'm actually, right as soon as I'm done filming this video, I'm gonna dive into filming the next tutorial video for this quilt. So you will have that to see very soon. If you have any questions that you would like answered in an upcoming video, be sure to leave those below in the description box. Just put question in all caps so we can easily spot those and then leave your question. And if you have any other comments or various things you'd like to chat about, just feel free to leave me a fun comment down below as well. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.